Innocently enough, I walked into American Legacy Gallery, and Jack Olson showed me a print of a brown thrasher. And I bought the brown thrasher because we had them nesting on our property. I thought they were really cool birds and had sentimental value for the family. Then my son discovered Maurice bebb and decided he was going to give me the best Father's Day ever. So he bought 4 Maurice bebbs, $25 a piece on eBay. And he used his PayPal account. He was very proud and very excited. And he thought that was a really fun thing to do, so he bought some more. And he bought some more. Then I looked at my credit card statement and realized he had been buying my gifts with my credit card.
Oh, no.
So we had a little conversation, and I said, well, if we're going to do this, let's put a little thought behind it, and let's start looking and buying particular prints. And as it progressed, and I learned more about Maurice bebb, I wanted to target pieces for the collection that would actually underscore periods of his career so we could do a retrospective exhibition. Some of you have heard this, but Maurice bebb was born in 1891 in Chicago, went to Calumet High School, graduated from the University of Illinois in 1913 with allegedly the very first Bachelor of Science degree in floriculture. He moved to Muskogee, Illinois to work in the family florist business after he graduated. He stayed there and ran the business, eventually owning it outright himself until he retired in 1951, where he gave the business to his son and grandson. Bebb's Flowers actually is still in business in Muskogee. However, in 1991, it was sold to someone outside the family, so the family no longer has an interest in it. Bebb started making prints, we believe, in the early 1930s, primarily lino cuts and Christmas cards. He did about 25 Christmas cards. If you'll notice in the case, there's several cards there. He did that for a while, and then as he got older, he said, I can't do this anymore. I'd rather do prints instead of Christmas cards. I got interested in Maurice bebb. When you start collecting prints as insanely as I do, one of the things you also collect are books. And I probably have more books in my collection than I have prints. But the thing with Maurice bebb was there were no books. There were no articles. I tried to find as much information about him as I could, and I couldn't find any. And there was a guy up in Chicago named Jim Harbison who has a website called mauricebebb.com. And his was the only real resource that I could find. We eventually contacted Jim, and Jim said, oh yeah, I grew up in Muskogee, and I actually had printmaking classes with Maurice bebb, and when I graduated from high school, he gave me a print. So we got connected with Jim, and what started with a 25-piece collection to display in a museum somewhere, turned into this retrospective exhibition and catalog raisonné. It was just really, I tell people it was a perfect storm. When I approached Corey about this, she was very enthusiastic about it. We had a lot of fun. Then we contacted Jim, and then Jim was very enthusiastic about it. And then we got the family's blessing. And just as we were getting ready to start looking for a publisher for the book, Pomegranate Press approached Jim and said, we're really intrigued by these images. Could you tell us a little bit more about him? We'd like to do a book. So at that time, the book was already written. And they basically said, well, we'll publish it. Probably the coolest thing about this is Maurice bebb was married twice. His first wife, Helen, died in 1972. We were very close. He married his second wife, Kappa, in 1982. Kappa is still alive. Kappa was here at the reception. And I was fortunate enough to walk into this exhibition with just the two of us. And when she said to me, I feel his presence here, I realized that what I had done was pretty cool. The Monday after the exhibition, I got a phone call from Kappa. And Kappa was just the sweetest woman ever. Said, what you did was amazing, what Corey did, what Jim did, because obviously you have a real passion and concern for my late husband. So the family has voted unanimously to donate the entire Maurice bebb collection to the Sandzen Memorial Gallery.
Oh, wow, that's
so that's the cool thing. So I mentioned this earlier, Bev had no formal instruction, really had wanted to draw for years and years and years and years and years before he ever put a pen or pencil to paper. His influences were Leon Pecherette, whose print is here on the left, Charles Capps, who's on the right, another one of the founding members of the Prairie Printmakers, and behind Bev is Charles Heil, who is known for his bird prints, and the print above that is one of Bev's, where he's trying to learn. Pieces that I find interesting and intriguing. Poeta's Narcissus, that actually hangs in our mudroom, so I could walk past that every day when it's not here. On the far wall are what I consider some of his finest bird prints. What's interesting about Bev is he worked in the florist business until 1951, full-time career, before he ever started full-time printmaking. He decides to become a printmaker and says, I know, just for fun, let's pick one of the most challenging methods of printmaking known to man. So these color prints are multi-plate color etchings with aquatint. So we have to actually run the plates through the press multiple times, meaning registration, getting all the colors to line up, is sometimes problematic. That's why there's two prints over here of the yellow-breasted chat. The top piece has very nice registration, nice colors. The bottom piece, the registration is off. So actually, on opening night, a friend of mine came in here and he goes, what, there's no original works of art here? And I'm like, no. These are all original works of art, and this is the very reason. Because of the interaction with the matrix and the challenge of printing. He also liked to experiment with paper and fabric. He'd often do it on paper and on satin. So here's the same image, top one on paper, bottom one on satin. In my opinion, the one on satin really pops. A lot of the prints, like Bob White's over there, that's printed on satin, and so the white really helps the other colors stand out. The piece above the Bob White's Evening Grosbeaks, every single seed he did in there was by hand. It just blows me away. He spent a total of 14 months in Europe between 1956 and 1958. These are examples of his work, which I think is some of his best. I actually have an original letter from him, which says, yes, 1956 and 1958, we bought a car and drove 32,000 kilometers across Europe. I sketching all the time, my wife Helen shopping most of the time. He's Welsh, which I'm also Welsh, which is kind of cool. He actually went to Wales and did an etching of that family farm. So about 220 prints he did, impressions he did in his lifetime, many in editions of, most of them in editions of 150. 40 of those sold out, so that's 6,000 prints just for those alone. I'll give you a challenge of putting together an exhibition like this in a catalog raisonné. You have all these records, and fortunately Maurice Bebb was a very meticulous record keeper. And when I went to visit Jim Harbison out in Chicago, he said, here's something I want to show you. And he handed me this folder, and it said print records on it with a little tie string. And I opened it up, and it was print records, color print records, printing keys for every single one of his color prints.
Wow.
And so these are examples that I'll have here on the counter. These are for some of the prints that are actually in the exhibition. And some of the notes here, registration difficult on satin. You can see some of the colors are crossed out. He was constantly experimenting. Here, Sycamore Warbler, changed to Yellow-throated Warbler in 1953. It's a Chicago, Prairie Printmakers of California. Oh, that's not right. No, it wasn't. You can see where this circulated with the Printmakers of California. His works were exhibited through Printmakers Society of California, Chicago Society of Etchers, and Prairie Printmakers, which actually had touring exhibitions. What else? Where else was I going with this? Oh, so he's a very fastidious record keeper. There's a print here, and actually one of my favorite prints in the collection. This is called Silver Poplar. It's done in an edition of 50. It hangs in my living room when it's not here. I see it every single day. Guess what print is not in the catalog raisonné? So, Jim up in Chicago has actually found some additional prints that the woman had that are very I don't think the family's even aware of them. So we're going to have either an errata book come out or a website where we'll post some of these. Anybody have questions? Because I can talk forever on this guy. Yes?
Some of these don't have numbers, so they're single.
No, they're almost all of them are in editions of 150. If you were to take the mat off on most of the prints that he did, especially the color prints, he'll have a number and it's circled here, and that's generally the edition, the number. One of the things that was interesting in doing this, you'll see, I probably don't know if I want to say this, but you'll sometimes see on the Prairie Printmaker prints that only enough prints were printed for members of the Prairie Printmakers and the plate was destroyed. Tufted titmouse, not tufted titmouse, white-breasted nuthatch, which is in the center here. His printing record shows somewhere between 300 and 400 prints of that. That was a Prairie Printmaker gift print in 1959. So theoretically, he should have only done 200. Also, on one of the gift prints, you can see where he had the plate steel-faced, meaning that he was actually planning on doing many more prints than what was intended. He lived in Muskogee. If you look at his works, they're birds, lots of birds, although he preferred doing landscapes. Birds that you would see in Oklahoma. They had a summer cabin up in Minnesota, so you'll see works from Oklahoma. The Minnesota birches, one of my favorite ones. This is over there. That's from Minnesota. You'll see works from Tennessee. He had an uncle that lived in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And then you'll see his European works.
John?
Yeah.
Did he work on photographs, or how did he?
No.
How did he work?
He would do a John James Audubon on some of them, meaning he shot them.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that about Or did he found?
Yeah, no, I was getting to that. He only did that with a few. He actually had friends, if a bird would strike a window, and they'd find a dead bird on the property, they would bring him over and he would draw from there. His grandfather, Michael Shookbeb, Maurice got all his interest in the natural world from his family. I have no doubt about that. His paternal grandfather, Michael Shookbeb, was a very well-known botanist who was probably one of the top international scholars on willows, picking with salix. His biological father, Robert Bebb, would go on botany excursions throughout eastern Oklahoma and take Maurice and his brother Forrest with him. So I'm sure he got his interest in birds and plants from his family. Robert Bebb, when he died, his collection of tens of thousands of pressed plant specimens was given to Oklahoma, University of Oklahoma. The herbarium there is named after his father. So very influential in the botany community. Other questions? Yes.
Was he considered a Prairie Printmaker, or was he sort of affiliated but not a member?
He was a member. In fact, it was kind of cool. One of the very first things Corey gave me when we started working on this, I don't know if you saw the inserts for the presentation prints in the other room, the Prairie Printmaker prints. When the print came, there would be an insert with it describing.
We'll get to those.
You'll get to those. Describing that. So when I first met Corey, she gave me Xerox copies of all of the presentation prints for the Prairie Printmakers, and they were all said Maurice Bebb. So the Beach Museum has all of Bebb's gift prints. So he was a member from start to finish.
Collecting.
So they pay like $5 a year, and you get a print. And so theoretically, I haven't seen it yet. I haven't been in this house, but he professes to have been collecting prints since the time he got married in like 1919. And so we've been invited, Corey and I have been invited to the house to do an inventory of all the works in the home. And I'm hoping to see like a folder of all these other prints. Maurice Bebb, nobody knows this, is also did oil paintings. And so I was talking to his widow. She goes, "Yeah, those aren't oil paintings. We have them stuck in these closets and they're in the way." And I'm like, "I'll take them." So,
John, you know how the beautiful colors in this wood blocking, but he's doing this all on one
that's
plate?
aquatint that's getting that color.
Okay, so he's just using one plate.
So, sometimes multiple plates where the image will be transferred.
Okay.
I don't have the book in here. But there's, you do like one color and run it through the press, do maybe on the next plate 2 colors. A lot of the ink was done a la coupe, so little sacks of ink dabbed up on the plate.
Oh, God.
Very,
They're doing that 150 times.
yeah. So what happens is, he would put the plate in, put the paper on it, run it through the press, and leave the edge of the paper underneath the press, which would hold it in place. Then he'd take the plate out, either put it in another plate, or ink out that plate again, put it and run it through. So if you look at...
Oh, my God.
You'll find it.
Every single one of these pages in the catalog raising A, I did every single one of these pages. So researching all the museum collections that they're in, writing a little blurb about the birds. Here we go. You guys probably can't see it as well. But I'll leave this up here so you can see it. This is this print, yellow-headed blackbirds. So this shows the sequence of how the ink is applied and how the plates are run through the press. So I don't know if you can see.
So is your book going to be sold at the Nelson now? Have you heard?
No, probably not.
Oh.
I don't know. I haven't approached them. They haven't approached me. Beth and I have been talking about it. Yeah, but it is. It's also available on Amazon. There's also a copy of it in the Spencer Reference Library.
And we do have that for sale now.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't want. So I'll leave this up here. So very complex printmaking technique. I mean, imagine being retired. Most people, play golf. And this guy, I mean, you can see him. Here he is, working at this press. And he was 94 years old when he died, and was still making prints at 94.
He did all his own printing?
He did. That's his press. The only thing he did is he added a motor to it when he got older. Press is still in the studio. His studio is still set up. Intriguing for me. He wasn't just a backyard bird watcher. I mean, if you know anything about birds, some of the birds represented here don't go to feeders. I don't know if I can find one. The red-eyed vireo. This is a perfect example. Blackburnian warbler, the New World wood warblers. I have seen these. It looks like their head's on fire. They're stunningly beautiful birds. This is my very first one this year, as a matter of fact. But they feed very high in the canopy of the trees. So if you're actually a bird watcher, you're looking for warblers, there's actually a legitimate disease called warbler neck. These will never come to feeders. So he was really an ornithologist. He studied studied birds. His bookcase is full of books by Roger Tory Peterson and another well-known artist, bird artist from Oklahoma, George McSutton. He had some of his books. Just an observation, the only bird of prey he ever did a print of is a screech owl. He never did any hawks or eagles. What else? Questions? I'll tell you the part that you don't, as a collector, you normally don't get to do. A couple other things. One of the reasons why I want to do this exhibition is these prints, I did not spend a lot of money on the prints. Some of these prints, as I said, were $25 a piece. Replacement cost is significantly higher than that. The other thing that's challenging in mounting an exhibition like this, and you want to show off the artist, you want to have them framed properly. Framing is expensive. I was fortunate having a relationship with American Legacy Gallery. They actually have a framer that I worked with that gave me ridiculous discount. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to have them framed for the exhibition. Cool thing. I will never go into a gallery now without a great appreciation of how much time it takes to hang the works. I spent a day here and we got this wall hung. Because I didn't know they had to be at a certain height. And then once you figure out that height, the center of the painting has to be at, what is it, 51 inches for you, or is it 55 inches? 52. And so then you have to figure out, okay, you have the hanging mechanism back here, so you figure out here, but then you have to subtract the amount that... Imagine doing that for all of these. So, and some of these are hung higher than Corey is, and she hung all of these.
And then, I'm working over here, and Ron, our director, comes in and said, you know that one you triple hung, which takes a lot of math? It's a little short. It wasn't, I had it an inch too far down, so I had to take it up and do the whole thing again.
The other thing that was fun about this is I have boxes full of prints that I brought down from Kansas City, and you lay the prints out on the floor, and then it's like, well, how do you hang this so it makes sense? What kind of curatorial theme can go through here? And so it was fun as we all, your intern was here, and we all walked through here and we moved pieces, and what about this and what about that? And I didn't realize we could actually do that, thinking of the collection as a whole, but once we had them out, you could see them and hang them and place them next to each other. It was really cool. My back still hurts.
Did you hang these with rings or with wires?
There's wires and just a simple nail.
Simple nail, not double.
Yeah, usually just one nail.
If you look at, this is really cool too, look at the wall covering. In many museums and galleries, when you hang a show and you take it down, you have to spackle and repaint the exhibition space. Well, this is a fabric. So what happens is when you take the nail out, the fabric closes together and you don't need to do that. So there's lots of nail holes here, but you guys can't see them. Isn't that cool?
It is cool.
So, if you have questions, I can keep going.
So you're a living specimen of what it's like. You're like the anonymous, well, you're the person that's missing from most exhibitions. You did it, so
Well,
that's what one looks like, right there.
Well, it's interesting when I did this. I'm like, do we want to have the Prince Society come down here because it's kind of self-serving? But then I'm like, no, Maurice Bebb is like a pretty amazing artist. I mean, if you look at this over here. So he did a lot of stuff from Oklahoma. So here's the old agency. This is the old Indian agency built in 1871, I'll say. So he's documenting his community here. Well, in 1966, it became the Five Civilized Tribes Museum. So here it is as the old agency, here it is as the Five Civilized Tribes Museum. Same thing, but a different view. And Corey and I have actually been in that museum together. Very cool. What else? If you look at some of his works, you can see influences from other artists or similarities. Lyman Bigsby here, perhaps. If you look at the 5 wine bottles, which is one of my favorite pieces, and according to his...
That looks like Tuscany.
Looks like Tuscany. Whistler influenced, some would say. Some would argue not, I say.
Right, where's five?
Yeah. No.
It looks like, well, those two, a definitely.
Yeah, they're opportunists. And it's funny, my son, we're outside one night, and my son goes, wow, Dad, look, it's a Maurice Bebb sunset. Well, no, it's the other way around. Yeah, just look, if you have questions, I can, like I said, I can talk to Dave.
This has a very feel of Japanese print to me, somehow.
It does. I mean, I look at that piece, and what fascinates me about that piece is the reflections, and the detail, and the age that he was when he did that. And he was like my age when he, now.
1958.
Yeah, I can go back on that.
Have glass on it?
No. Well, it is, not glare.
No, that's
Yeah,
the
I
reason,
think there
that's the
is
reason
something
for the
on there. I
exhibition.
see a little sheen when you go to the side.
Still is.
So it must be non-glare.
He's highly technical.
Looks like
He
it's
had
on
a great
glass.
understanding and appreciation of the
See, now
subject
this
matter.
doesn't have the same.
Yeah,
People
this is different.
should know about this guy because he was such, to me, very
Well,
significant.
that glass, that non-glare glass is cool.
It is.
Well, it's been fun. It's been fun. It's been a little overwhelming. When I unbox, you know, when you have all these pieces framed and boxed, they have not all been hung in my house at once. We only had about 25 of them up. And so I come down here with a box. And it was like a circus clown car. I'm like, where did all these prints come from? So it's just, and meeting, you know, going down to Muskogee and seeing Muskogee, that was interesting. Everybody had a story about him in Muskogee. Oh yeah, my grandma knew him. Everybody has one of his prints. When I went into the flower shop, the woman who owned it, said, I started working at Bebb's Florist in 1957, and every year, he's retired at this point, every year he would come in and say, come on, girls, pick a print, and all the women in the office got to pick a print. They'd never owned their shops, they always rented them, but he had a space in one for framing, and so he'd have the girls, couldn't say that today, had the girls come and pick a print, and then he would frame it for them. And so I was a little surprised. It's kind of one of those things, yeah, everybody knows him. The library didn't have much material on him. I've got some help with death records in the library, but not much. So I look at the works that he did. In 1966, this is so cool for me, a bunch of conservationists, natural history folks from Oklahoma went up to the Cornell Lab of Ornithology in Ithaca, New York, which I don't mind. Anyway, I'm really familiar with him. And so he went up there with this group in 1966, and he took a bunch of his prints with him, and they said, wow, let's do a show. So they hung a show of his works and sold his works up there. They have probably 20 or 25 of his works in their collection. The largest holder that I could find of prints is the Oklahoma State Art Collection. They have about 160 of his works, and Minneapolis Institute of Art has about 126.
How many do you have?
I have 80-ish.
Wow.
All the ones we have are up. I've been starting to collect other things.
Well, do you have a favorite?
You know, everybody asks me that.
I mean,
Like
it must
if-
be excruciating to figure out.
No, because, you know, when they're hanging in your house and you walk by them every day, you see different things. For me, I really like Canada Jay, which is actually called Gray Jay now. I don't know if you guys noticed this. He's a bird watcher, I would. There's a pileated woodpecker on that tree back there. I really love this piece. To print that on silk, to get that kind of fine detail and fine line, I just think it's amazing. The sparrowhawk around the corner, even grosbeaks. I mean, it's like kids. People ask me, well, who's your favorite kid? You can't have a favorite. I'll tell you one I don't like. Is Nellie. It's probably his worst piece.
He embellished it.
It's got a snake head. It looks like it's a serpentine thing. Question.
Did he write anywhere about why he used soft brown? Why was that his favorite?
You know, you look at some of the materials that are out there on some of these other printmakers. Leon Tesseret. When people look at this and think it's a lithograph, it's an etching. How did he do that? I have no idea. He communicated a lot with caps.
I love these.
Tesseret had a book on printmaking. It was a booklet, and Maurice Bebb had that. Why he chose that, I'm guessing because of the feel of it. I mean, the piece behind you, that's incredible.
Texture detail. You just get more detail out of soft brown?
He's
very detail oriented.
Soft ground and aqua tinting will give you the shading modulation. Combining that with the etching gives you detail and shading dimension. So you get the best in everything. He didn't seem to do that. No, he didn't get texture into it.
So I'm more than happy to answer questions, but we have